Hello, hello. This is Pete Oslin with the Bending Rules podcast. Welcome, where we talk about all things entrepreneurial stories, and journeys, and challenges, failures, things of that nature, all in the hopes of helping you make better decisions about your entrepreneurial journey. Right? Yeah, that's the idea. It's a project where we get back. Just kind of quick intro of myself. You've heard this before, but I'm a 4-time startup guy. Been entrepreneurial all my life, and I found myself in these types of conversations and thinking, gosh, these would be great to pass along. So today I've got a couple of guests here, and I say a couple because it's an unusual format for us. You got one entrepreneur at a time, but these guys, they kind of travel as a unit. If you're at all familiar with what they've done here in Bend, Oregon, and actually outside of that area now. So I have Chris and Jeremy Cox, the Cox brothers, who are probably most well known with starting 10 Barrel, and which is a brewing company that was eventually sold to Anheuser-Busch. Of course, we'll get there, but that's not the only thing we're going to talk about here today. So we want to hear about where they started their entrepreneur journey, how they got there, what they're doing now. That's the idea. So thanks, guys. We could do a quick little intro on your backgrounds, but mostly I kind of wanted to get in you guys to share kind of what we talked about a little bit over coffee the other week, kind of your origins and entrepreneurs and where it started. So let's start when you're 6 months old. Maybe not that early, but
Well, I think they might have mixed this up.
yeah. I'm looking at Jeremy.
I'm on this one.
Yeah, they still are not totally clear. Well, you guys have journeyed together.
Yeah.
Whole lives in your entrepreneurial adventures. So I guess in that regard, was this something that just sort of being entrepreneurs was something that was part of your family life? I mean, were your parents entrepreneurial, or did it like a byproduct? Cairn, and sort of juice. You never know what sort of gets you into that. Maybe you can just kind of start with where that's
Be like, oh, sorry, I can't.
Yeah. Sure, you probably got can't see it.
I mean, our dad was a plumber, and so we grew up in Lincoln City. Dad was a plumber, owned his own plumbing business while we were growing up, and we saw, he had the flexibility and schedule, worked tremendously hard, and always admired in taking a risk and doing that all on his own. And I think it's spread our blood a little bit. We have a lot of family members on that side of the family that either have started business, a lot of them failed, a lot of them succeeded, and so it's something we always wanted to do. Didn't necessarily think we were going to actually jump into it because we definitely went to college, got corporate jobs, and went that route at the beginning. But as time went, we sort of navigated that direction and ended up starting some stuff.
Yeah, but we got caught selling my mom's magazines. We were like 12 to the neighbors, and then we started some businesses in college, right? So we learned we were in programming, so we started making websites and then trying to sell the website. So it's always kind of been in our blood to make something.
It's just the first BRB.
Yeah, but VRBO, you tell me about that, because you guys did that here in Bend, the VRBO thing.
No, we were in college and we were making websites, and we had a class to make websites. And one of the projects was to make a website for somebody locally in Corvallis. And so we did that. And I think they, paid us like $1,000 to make their website or whatever. And they're like, no, this isn't ours. And we go behind it. So we're like, what do we need? What are we seeing? Right. And at the time we were spending a lot of time in summer. We grew up vacationing. Actually started with Dad, right? Real estate in the city. Yes, but my dad went from plumbing to construction and then went into real estate. And he had a ton of listings. I think he had like 300 or 400 listings at the time in Lincoln City. And we're like, Dad, we could create this website. We can get these listings out so more people could see these, right? Because at the time, he actually had to go to the real estate office, look at the brochures. This is 1997. Yeah, and so we were like, let's help you out, Dad. We'll put all these listings on a website for it. You can have your name on there and get it out to everyone and tell them now exactly where you're listing. So we started with my dad, built that for him, and then while we're in his office as well, they had a bunch of rentals, and so all the other agents started figuring out what he was doing, and actually he was getting a lot of traction and a lot of visibility with his listings, and so we started a second part of the website, which was rentals, is what we called it. We had no idea what we were doing, but then we started that, and they started helping some of these folks that were actually in the Windermere office, and we had a house in Sun River at that time. We were still in college, And we're like, man, there's so many rentals there. Why don't we start a rental business and we'll start doing it for these companies? And Sun River. So we actually started on the side while I was selling software. I'd make some phone calls to Sun River, and we just continued for a while we first got our first shops. Yeah, exactly. It's not to get too long-winded, but we actually ended up signing up a couple different rental agencies in Sun River. Built his websites for him, and then after about a year doing that, we said that we probably should do something else, and so we sold it to somebody for this lady for $6,000. And we did add support, though. We were supporting for 6 months. Yeah. So you got a little capture. Yeah. We paid some Swift was a lot of money back in the day. We bought a lot of beer and pizza with that. Yeah. It was an amazing exit for us. That's real dollars. Curiosity, did she continue? Yeah. No.
Kind of for a while, maybe.
Yeah. I think about a year later, she hired somebody serious and probably got it done. But yeah.
Well, you may have had regrets about that had you not gone out and done a few other things that were pretty successful. Look back on that one and gone like, man, what were we doing? That was my golden ticket. As it turns out, now you kind of continue to pursue the entrepreneurial journey, which, sounds like it was in your DNA at a young age. So how much time did you guys spend? You got out of college, you sold this business. You guys go both your own ways working, I'm sure, for a bit. And then, was it in the hospitality industry?
Yeah, no. Jeremy got into software sales out of college, and then I got into business consulting. And then we're working like in office buildings right next to each other in downtown Portland. That was kind of our dream, coming from a small town. We always thought it'd be great to wear suits and working downtown in a big city.
Just briefcase to work.
Yeah,
feel like you arrive.
Yeah, maybe jump on a plane, and Microsoft. So I was flying to Seattle every week, renting cars, and it was like,
I think you should create a restaurant.
It was amazing, and then realized that, hey, I'm married. Like on the road, this is really that much fun. Oh, by the way, I have a boss. You got to dictate if I'm doing a good job or not. And then after a while, it just, it didn't make sense for us to report up to somebody, right? And maybe we disagreed. Maybe I disagreed with somebody, and I'm like, this isn't my path. And it was going really well for us. Both of us were doing really well in our jobs. He was making a lot of money. He was crushing a software company. I was moving up the ranks pretty fast in Arthur Andersen Business Consulting. So it was crushing, but it wasn't fulfilling what we wanted. And so we just started looking at businesses at that time, like, hey, should we open a Subway franchise? And I was going to do that myself because Jeremy was making so much money. He's like, dude, at that time when we were young, it's not that much money if you look at it now. Yeah. But at that time, wow, he's crushing it out of college. So a couple of those things fell through. And then it started when Jeremy was out of beer. Yeah. So we were, like I said, we had a house in Sun River, and we were over here for the weekend, and there's this, sort of shitty bar that was in downtown. There's sort of Delphi bar that we were hanging out. And by the way, we had zero hospitality experience. Chris was a busser for like 3 months in high school, but that's about it. And we were in this bar, and the guy was like, "Hey, man, I'm trying to sell this place. You guys are from town, but if you know anybody that wants to buy this," and it was a really, really cool bar. It was called Fitty's Poorhouse at the time, and I was like, I was looking at it, I was like, man, we could really do something cool with this. And so I called my brother up and said, "Hey, this guy wants to sell his bar. It's not, it's not a lot of money, and you should drive over tonight. We can look at it on Sunday." And so he came over. It went really quick. So we were like, within a week, we had made an offer on it. So we went back and forth negotiating. It was all the cash we had.
Yeah. This is in summer.
This is in Bend.
Just in downtown Bend.
Yeah, that's also JC. So it's that was JC.
Yeah, it's JC.
Yeah. So that's Jeremy Chris. Yeah.
Yeah, I think I heard that about you.
Yeah. So I remember calling my mom. She was like, "Are you serious? You guys are, what am I going to tell my friends? You guys are going from the corporate world to buy a bar?" And I'm like, "Mom, this is going to be awesome. It's going to be great." It's the only thing that really ever disagreed with us. Fully non-supportive of us leaving corporate world. Yeah. Place. Yeah. So did you guys fast forward a couple months, and we were still living in Portland. Chris and I kept our jobs. We were both married at the time, and they both go over to Sun River, and they'd run the bar from Monday to Thursday, and then Chris and I, would come over Thursday night after working in Portland, and then run it Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and then drive back after a shift on Sunday, which was usually like midnight. So we get back to Portland like at 3 a.m. and show up to work back at 6 a.m. in downtown Portland. So we did that for like almost 6 or 7 months, and it was a grind, but but we learned the business really quickly. Yeah. And it's sort of yeah, it was a fun experience, but we learned a bunch, and I think that by the second month we made, we fired everyone, so there were people stealing, and there was just a lot of it was a mess. Yeah, it was like it wasn't good, but yeah, the second month we made $200, went across the street. There was this Mexican food place called El Capital. We bought like $200 with margaritas and tacos, and we're like, hey, I think we should get this out. And so we made money ever since, on that JC's. But yeah, it was a great experience. Got us in Bend. And it was sort of our first business that we owned that was legit. Yeah.
And so prior to making that decision by JC's, because it sounded like it just well at the behind 50 Sport House, were you guys already looking for businesses? You were kind of tossing around ideas. You maybe seen a couple other things, but nothing really stuck out yet. You like some, you like Ben. So, okay, that makes a little sense how you transition that. I mean, one of the things I'm always curious about, sometimes I have a co-host on here too, could make it, or want you at some point, but it's sort of the origins of your capital, like how do you finance?
Oh yeah, it was like we got numbers, right? But I think it was like he won the 90 grand and all we had was 60,000, and I had like 20 and he had like 40. And so we just put it in. He accepted 60,000. That's all we had. And then that's one thing that we never had. So never had. Our family is the best. We have amazing parents, amazing family, great support system. But we didn't grow up in a wealthy family, right? So throughout our whole business career, we've had to be super creative on how we finance projects and how we source money, which is really tough, right?
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
Yeah, one thing we didn't realize is there's running capital you need for a business. So put all in money in a business, and then realize you have to pay employees and you have to buy food.
Yeah,
it doesn't start. It's how our net 15 starts catching up, and you're like, whoa, yeah, we rent, and yeah. So it was a learning experience,
but you're learning all that, and so you got the one. I mean, JC's is at this point it's a pretty popular place in Bend, and it's generating some cash for you guys, but given what you're probably making in your corporate job, it's not generating equivalent to that. So you decided still to leave those jobs and make the leap and move over here, right, with your families. And then, did you have a vision at that time what you wanted to do beyond JC's?
I mean, I think for sure. I mean, I think we just loved that. Yeah, we were making 1/4 the money that we were making in the world, but I think the flexibility and just the freedom of being able to make our own decisions, and just loved it more than, I really enjoyed our jobs. I really enjoyed my job that I worked in the world, but it was really refreshing to work with your brother and just be able to make your own decisions. And at that point we were like, hey, we're not making a lot of money, but I think, we're going to do something that makes a lot of money. And so let's start this, let's get this rolling, right? Let's try to figure out how we can suck as much cash as we can out of this business so we can live in Bend without too many sacrifices. And then at that point we're like, hey, give us a little bit of time, a couple of years, then we'll figure out how we can do that. It would be a lot of fun that also would generate a lot of income.
Gotcha. So you did have your, kind of this horizon idea, like we're going to eventually move. Okay, so that's like 2000, what, 5, 6, 7?
Yeah, it's 2003, 2004.
Okay, so you got this 2002, 2003, 2004. Economy's doing pretty good. Ben's growing. And then how did you get into this side?
I can tell you sort of the path. So JC's got to a point where at that time there wasn't a lot of restaurants and bars in Bend.
Yeah.
I disagree. This was touch that was required. Lots of buddies. Might have served some raw chicken out of the kitchen. That takes a little while to figure it out. A lot of our buddies, as years have gone by, now come out and said that they thought they'll be there if they saw Jeremy on the grill. And it's pretty offensive to me. They said he'd make better clam chowder, which I totally disagree with. But
hey, you tried something different.
Yeah.
I might want to get into it. Like what you guys thought were your skills, especially if you sort of bring it something. If you're in this industry from now the inception. All right, so
the first step was to expand the bar, and we did that. And so I think we learned a bunch by doing that. We leased the spot next to us, which was an Australian store. And expanded JC, so we were able to triple our capacity at that point. And it was really great for the first couple of years as we expanded. But we learned a bunch through that process, and generated. I think we went from $1 million in sales to almost $4 million in sales annually by expanding the bar, which was a great move for us. And then sort of in that process, 2 years into expanding, we decided that we're a massive craft beer bar. Brian and Mike would win them and Deschutes, Gary Fish, they were coming in our bar a bunch, and because we're selling a ton of their craft beer. And that time, Mike and Brian were McMenamin were opening St. Francis across the street, so they're coming in a bunch. And like, hey, you guys love craft beer, and you guys sell a ton of it. Like, why don't you guys, you guys ever look to the financials of brewing your own beer and selling it at your own restaurant? So at that point, sort of opened their eyes a little bit. So they came in and showed us some financials, and actually they were our support system at the very beginning when we started 10 Barrel. That we used to call them up, and Gary actually helped us out a ton as well. And we call them up, and it's just Shrewsbury, and call them up, and he'd give us advice. This is what you guys need. You guys need first hire a brewmaster. And so it really helped us out getting started.
That's very cool. Yeah, the path of mentorship and like finding the mentors in the industry and stuff like that, and how important it is. So you expanded the 4 million.
Basically, yeah, we just financed the expansion with the cash flow that we were gaining, and just took some small incomes, and we were able to. The other thing was like $100,000 at the end of the day. So
yeah,
we just kind of financed it ourselves. But yeah, we still financed everything up to the point. And JC's kind of helped that up to a certain point in 10 Brawl where we couldn't self finance it anymore.
Yeah,
and then we tried to go get a loan.
So you spun out, did the self financing to start 10 Barrel.
Yeah,
that became your brand. There's craft brewing is kind of taken off, obviously.
Yeah, we hit the industry.
You did have good. I mean, I commend you on your time here, sure, but still, not everybody finds success in that. So there's a lot of nuances to that in the sense, what did you do better than others, perhaps?
Yeah,
you're financing it. So what? You got it. You didn't. When you said you financed it to a point, was it the first one that you?
Yes, we opened a small brewery on the other side of town, renting space. But yeah, no, just started, threw some tanks in there, through a brew house. I don't know, partnered with somebody, brewmaster at the time, because we didn't know anything about brewing. We still don't to this day. Partnered with the brewer, and started brewing beer and selling it to JC. Started JC's first couple months, and then we knew all the other owners in town. We were friends with them, so then they started picking up our beer. Yeah, our beer was awful. Started picking up our beer like more of a charity, And then,
well, your guys' beer sucks, but I like you guys. So I'll throw it on tap. It'll be no one's gonna drink it.
Yeah, no one's gonna drink it. So you're gonna have to come in here and basically with your friends and buy beers. So, then we had to take our party from JC's over to Sidelines or wherever the other places that were supporting us and drink our own beers no one else would, right? So that's how that kind of evolved.
But eventually you got to be pretty good.
Yeah. So we made a couple moves on the beer side, right? So we knew that there's a couple of pivotal times. I mean, there's I think we realized, really early, right, that it's first of all, it's difficult to sell beer, right, into restaurants, because at that time there was a ton of really good craft breweries, especially in Bend, Oregon, and then there's a lot of good ones coming out of Portland, and really Bend was the market that Portland breweries really wanted to sell beer into, because Deschutes was the biggest brewery at the time. And in Oregon, that was their home base, and everybody from Portland wanted to take a little piece out of Deschutes, and so it was a really competitive market. We realized really, really early in the process that if you have average or below average beer, I mean, it's your relationships only go so long with the bar owner. And they're like, hey, I love you guys, but I got to put somebody else in town. Move. And so we made a decision, I don't know, about a year into, us trying to pitch mediocre beer, that we needed to bring in some of the better brewmasters to that. And Chris was actually at GABF, sort of funny story. We had I don't know if I can tell us. Yeah. Yes, we had we were our second brewmaster. This time. But he was actually pretty good. He actually improved our beer a lot, but we're still maybe average or above average at that point. But we knew in order to be successful, we needed to have some of the best beer in Oregon. And so Chris was at GABF, which is the biggest beer festival in the U.S. And there was these, he was sitting there next to the brewmaster that we had, our number 2 guy that we had brought in. And Chris was telling the story, like, hey, why, Jimmy, this guy from Deschutes kept on going up, winning all these medals, and there was a real ton of net from Bid Brewing that's winning all these medals, and there's a guy named Sean Kelso from Barley Browns, which is over in Baker City. They kept on walking up the stage, and it was just like a rotating door of these guys going up. These three brewers. There's just thousands of brewers.
Yeah.
And they're just winning it, right? Chris is like, man, why can't we win? I mean, the brewmaster looks at Chris and says, we can't beat those guys. So at that point, Chris called me up afterwards and said, hey, we got to let go of this guy. We got to hire these three folks. And so that was our mission for the next 2 months. So we actually had a pretty clever way to doing that. We actually talked to them each individually. Obviously, they all had really good jobs. They were all doing really, really well. They managed a bunch of brewers at that time. We were asking them to leave these great companies and come work for us. And And so we actually brought them all into the same room, not telling them that we were doing that. Brought them all in the same room and basically gave them an offer and said, "Hey, we can't do this without you guys. Going forward, here's the things. We don't even have the money to pay."
Wait, so you have 2 or 3 of them?
No, so there's 3 of them, right? So
Yeah.
we set up interviews.
So do you need all the 3?
We didn't, but we wanted all 3, right? So we wanted all 3 because we knew that one was really good at flops, like one was really good at like sours, and one was like just crushing everything, right? And one was a leader. And so we're like, so we talked to them all on the phone, brought them all in the interviews, and then they showed up and they were all 3 there together, and they're all really close, anyways. We know that the brewing industry is really tight on the upper tier, especially the really good brewers, and so they're really good friends. And so then they all showed up, and they're like, "Whoa, what are you doing here? What are you doing here? Are you here to talk to the Cox boys too?" So we brought them all in the same room. We're like, "Hey, this is our plan. This is what we want to do. We don't want to be mediocre. Like, we want to be the best, and we need the best brewers in the world." And they bought it. They all 3 bought in at that time, and they're like, they're all limited by something, right? So Jimmy was limited by being behind the Deschutes wall, right? Deschutes brewery so big that a lot of people didn't know who he was, even though he was the guy there. Tanya was limited because she was with a really small brewery, so she couldn't get her beer out nationwide because it's a really small brewery. And then Sean, same kind of setup, right? Where there's another really good brewmaster there where he was working, so he was getting a lot of the credit too. And so like they're artists, right? And they want their art to be shown to the world, right? And that the more you can kind of pitch that. And so for us, and they're all rad people, so like they'd be awesome to work with, and we get along with them super well. So yeah, we made a commitment that day that all 5 of us were in, and at that minute, that commitment changed the entire trajectory of our brand. The beer just got 1,000 times better. We had the best IPAs in Oregon. We had the best sours in Oregon. Like, it just came in, and we somehow figured out a way to make payroll.
Yeah.
So we could sell enough beer. But yeah, it was a pretty amazing thing. And then since then, we didn't have to worry about the beer, right? And we don't know how to make beer.
Well, that's what I was going to roll back to. Like, you guys were like, "Hey, you don't know anything about beer."
Yeah.
Knowing what you need to do. I mean, having a story within the story is almost more important. Knowing what you need to do to win.
Yeah.
Right. Let's get these guys and one gal. But, part of that is articulating the offer to them and finding the need that they have. It's sort of what I'm reading into this, because that's a big move for a startup to snag, that level of talent, probably, right?
Yeah, it was massive. It was a massive move in the industry. It like shook up the industry at that point. It was almost as big a shakeup as when we sold Anheuser-Busch. Like, that was like everyone knew about it in the industry. Everyone knew that we just took like 3 of the best brewmasters in Oregon to go work for the same company.
Now, maybe you can't get into this perspective, and it's fine if you can't, but I'm just wondering, like, structurally, how did you do that? Like, if someone's trying to say, "Gosh, yeah, I want the best person too. I got another idea on this," drawing a parallel in a minute, but did you do some combination of, like, I don't know, they get some percentage of the gains? I mean, because you sent the money to do this, which they may or may not have known. They probably didn't know that element exactly of it, but what were you able to do structurally to sort of entice them? For a lot of times options, right?
Yeah.
Multiple options to the company, and they got to believe those options are going to turn into something. So that would be a bit of a parallel, I would say. But what did you guys? And again, don't.
I think we could show them financials and show them like, "Hey, here's our plan in the next 5 years, which show major growth, major capital expenditures of buying tanks and bigger brew houses, and here's what the financials look like. So we can pay you this amount of money at this point," but they had to trust us. I think really the key was for us with the recruitment side is trying to figure out, outside of money, what are you guys missing in your current positions? And I think Chris was the nail it. Like Jimmy, he was behind the wall and wasn't getting a lot of credit for a lot of the stuff he was doing, right? Tanya was, couldn't get her beer out to the world. So I think those were the things that really were itching out of it. A true artist, right, isn't in it for the money. Right? I mean, it's great to make a lot of money, but they're in it, for the reasons why they got in it originally. And so I think they just really love making beer and making customers happy and doing something.
Well, you guys have good intuition about that. These are the things that motivate their behavior.
Yeah.
And you have a track record with JCs and you've grown and expanded, so now you can fall back on that and say, "We've done this."
We were really hoping that we could execute the plan. We didn't know.
Well, sure, yeah, absolutely. Well,
I think everyone we always was about the team, right? I think we found a really good, we're really good at finding people that were really good at what they do, that cared more about winning and the team than they cared about money. even though we try to supply them with the best salary possible and the best, path forward, but we always were able to find people that really skilled at what they do and really they wanted to win more than anything. And these brewers wanted to win. Like, that's
You wanted to win, but that was your goal. Yeah, and you guys wanted to win too.
Fast forward like 6 years at the time we sold, right? I think we had like 15 employees at the time that were making more money than us, right? So I think it was more important for us to, stay true to our promises with the brewers.
Yeah.
We brought in sales guys, sales folks, running marketing folks that, same scenarios where they're, working for massive companies making $180,000 with a $60,000 bonus. And at the time when you have 14 employees, right, you can't afford that.
Yeah.
You're like, hey, this is what I can do. This is how you can help us grow. We're doing something really cool right now, and I promise we can pay you, in the future. And we definitely loyal about that.
Yeah. And went on that. Well, from an execution standpoint, I mean, I think if I'm thinking about, I'm competing with you guys in the brewing industry, and I didn't have the same outcome, I might point back to this being one of the decisions in the sense of getting the quality talent that you can't. Pretty easy to be cheap as an entrepreneur. You should be frugal. I bet you guys are pretty frugal when you're, doing your thing as it where you need it to be.
Mm-hmm.
But at times you got to say it isn't about that. It's about sometimes it's a marketing expense, or we're going to go over to Europe, improve our products here, because it's just eventually you're going to recapture, that expense. And that was definitely one of them. And all right, so that's a cool move. And then you mentioned earlier, okay, you get these guys start creating great beer. Obviously that's helping the sales. Where was your finance? You said you had like the frat guy financing. So you had some trip up along the way. At this point, you're not financing, you're just doing
Well, now we have good beer, right? We have more. We're keeping our handles, right? Wherever, in all the restaurants, because the beer's selling really well. And now we have to make more beer, right? But we're not making enough money because we're paying a lot of salaries and paying the people that deserve the money, paying them well. And so we don't really have enough money to grow the business, right? Yeah. So for us, we're like, oh yeah, we'll just go get our first loan, right? We have the track record, we'll be able to pay it off. And we met with this banker, and I remember he was like, it was the bank that we banked with at the time here at Bend. It was an old guy, and he'd come to JC's quite a bit back in the day. And nice fella. But we went in there and asked for some financing and gave him our financials, provided all the stuff we needed. I'm sure it was super elementary financials. So we were like 25, 26 at the time. And we probably get it, but he was probably like, these guys are a joke. But he made it. What year was this now?
I don't even, it's probably 2009, 2010.
Yeah. So it is.
Bankers are a little scared.
Yeah.
They've had the great recession. No, it's slower. There is
2007, 2008. Yeah.
Not a great time to ask for money, but you're kind of on the wild. We were naive. I just think they were making decent money making at that point real estate loans is sort of like, why would I diversify that? Well, let's find out really quick why you diversify from that.
Yeah.
So, okay, so there's some dynamics there going on.
Yeah, and this guy pretty much looked at us and said, hey, I don't do frat boy financing. You guys remind me of a bunch of frat boys. And I still to this day know what he meant by that. Right?
Nothing so.
Doesn't look like we're getting a loan, Jeremy. So at that time, we started reaching out to private guys, and we didn't know anybody who had any money at the time. So we had some friends that got us in touch with some people, and actually your neighbor down the street was one of the guys that helped us out. So his name was Cairn.
Oh yeah.
Big finance guy in town, did a lot, great entrepreneur, and really just like pick and chose like different groups of people in town that he helped work finance and do some projects with, and thank God he helped us out. So he came in and we paid extremely high interest rates, right? He never got a piece of the company. He took us to the woodshed, taught us a bunch of stuff.
Hard money.
Yes, he taught us a bunch of stuff of how to negotiate money deals because he used all of those against us. He'd always change it last minute. Like literally the hour we were signing the document, always stress a couple percentage points and stuff. But we couldn't have done anything. We couldn't have grown the company without him. And so, yeah, there was some cool stuff that happened there. And then, he helped us out a ton with financing and he was really a relationship guy, like trusted people, wasn't really a big finance guy. Like he didn't want to look at our financials, which was pretty interesting for a guy that was that wealthy. He's more about like, hey, you look me in the eye and tell me what you're going to do.
Yeah.
And so maybe that's why I got the look. We wouldn't be able to provide financials at that point. But yeah, no, it was a pretty awesome deal. So he trusted us. He'd be in the brewery like every week, right? Checking on us.
Yeah.
And give us advice and kind of just, he was always just kind of around.
Yeah.
And a really good mentor for us. He passed away a couple of years ago, which was a really sad thing for us. But he did a lot of basic things for us on the financing side.
Yeah. It's kind of amazing to understand this is really going with his intuition, not asking for the numbers and things of that nature, just kind of reading you guys as people, how you treat your employees and things of that nature. You understand that you guys are driven. It's not really common, put a chip on your shoulder.
Yeah, we always carry chips.
I was going to say, yeah, you have a chip on your shoulder too?
Yeah, for sure.
What was your chip on?
Well, I mean, that was
Yeah. I was wondering, like, do entrepreneurs have chip on their shoulder? I feel like I had a chip on my shoulder. Most people I talked to had some sort of chip that was created maybe through their childhood, whatever, not being good at that, my kid to succeed. So you find something, right? It's kind of create more drive. And sometimes it's just stuff like that. Was there anything else that kind of created the drive?
You guys, I mean, I just think there's that, just I think as an entrepreneur, right, there's always people that are down, right? I think, I can't remember maybe with Michael Jordan. It always came up for some reason, right? In the game, sort of hit somebody, so we play harder. And I think, we did a lot of that as we're growing businesses, or because it's hard. You're waking up at 5 a.m., go to the brewery, racking off kegs, throwing them in the back of your truck, driving around, delivering beer, coming back, racking off beer. I mean, you're working 7 days a week for as many days as I can ever remember, right? So you're working as hard as you can, and you got to have some sort of inner motivation inside that gets you out of bed, that fires you up, right? And I think we always just talk about all the situations that we had been in where people said, hey, you guys aren't going to make it, or I think this is a bad move, or, you guys are from the coast. There's no way you guys can pull this off, right? There's been a lot of scenarios where you guys, whatever, just guys that doubt you, right? And you go with vendors, customers, retail accounts, other friends, competitors, friends. I think you got to store that up, right? And keep that in the back of your mind. So when you're grinding late at night, or, you're tired, you pull that within, deep within, and you're like, hey, I'm going to show these guys that we can do this, right? And I think we use that a lot throughout our lifetime. And maybe it's a chip that we create, but there's definitely some people out there that always root against you. My dad always says winners or losers think about winners, or winners think about winning, right? And so I think, if when you're in the business and you're driving, right, you're thinking about how can we improve, how can we win in this game? And there's a lot of people always trying to sort of beat you down. I think if you just use that as motivation, it definitely helps.
So Cal helps you guys out a little bit. That leads to what? You finance. You go from having a location on the east side, then Galveston, the one over in the west side was your second location. And then your main thing is, you have some storefronts, but your main thing is to produce as much beer as possible. And shift your mindset a little bit. You've been running GCs, but now getting into kind of production, right?
Yeah, so I think honestly, over some stuff. Yeah, I mean I think that to clean it up a little bit, right? We had the small brewery. We hired the 3 brewers. We got financing through Cal. That's when we actually moved locations and expanded to a way bigger location. So now we have the ability to make a lot more beer. That's quality beer. And that's when the recession hit in 2009. And so the restaurants started shutting down. And at that point, we're like, hey, we got to sell Portland. So Chris and I would drive every Thursday to Sunday. And so we finally got into Sugar to pick up. Yeah, we finally got a Sugar to pick up beer. It was the best Sugar in Portland. Yeah, which is amazing at the end of the day. It was an Anheuser-Busch.
Why did they pick it up?
And one of the main guys,
you can get beer. Yeah, when you have a story to tell, you got the right people.
Yeah, I mean, Jeremy skipped a little bit over. We had a couple other partners in the business too that helped us out, and they had relationships in the distributor business, and because of that, we were able to talk to this Anheuser-Busch distributor, and one of the senior managers at the company used to be our rep. They sold us beer in JC's. So like it all like kind of came together, and then they picked up our brand. And then it was on us to go over to Portland and sell it. So we're dying right now because we have a lot of brewers, high payroll, restaurants are selling a lot of beer. So we have to go to Portland and sell. So I remember we go over for the first intro meeting. We're young. We blow the meeting up, like crush it. There's like 150 people in this room, all like sales guys. And there's kind of a first big presentation at 10 Barrel. And just fired this whole team up. And normally, if you're like a big brand or you do ride-alongs with the reps like for a couple of days, you're so small at the time, they didn't even give us ride-alongs. They're just like, hey, why don't you just go out and sell some of your beer? So I remember going out the first time, we went straight to this Italian restaurant because they owned a restaurant in Bend. And so we know these people, let's go there. They'll pick up our brand. and they had 2 beer taps, Budweiser and a Bud Light handle, and they gave us the Budweiser handle. So we called them up, like, dude, first account, crush it, called the rep up, we got this, deliver Apocalypse, or one of our beers, I forgot what it was. And he's like, awesome, like, what handle did you get? Like, Budweiser handle. I was like, no, we can't take the Budweiser handle, like, we just did, and on top of that, we unscrewed from the tap handle, we got it in our hand, we were so excited, we got our first handle, and about 20 minutes later, the owner of the distributor called us up and was like, take that Budweiser handle back down there. You guys can't take a Budweiser handle. This is an AB distributor. You're not self-distributing anymore. You're playing with all the other guys. And that was kind of our first realization that distributors are different, right? Even though that we always took the approach, and all of our sales guys took the approach, that we get any handle we can get, right?
Yeah.
It's us against the world, right?
Yeah.
And so we didn't bring the handle back down. We still have that Budweiser handle. They ended up putting on 10 Barrel, the restaurant did, and I think probably Anheuser-Busch probably switched it back over next week. But I guess the point of the story is we would sell beer here from Monday through Thursday. We drive over Thursday night. We sell beer Friday, Saturday, Sunday, drive back here Sunday night. We did that for like 2 years. So we were riding for 2 years, making sure that we could get replacements. And it worked out great for us because we gave a lot of attention to that distributor. We ended up growing the brand super successfully in Portland. 10 Barrel just took off in Portland because we were there constantly. The owners were there constantly in the market 4 days a week for 2 years. I'm sure the distributor was, because they sold a bunch of different brands, I'm sure they were annoyed by us being in the market constantly, but it worked out for us. We just had to grind it out.
Was this decision for you guys like a product of the recession, essentially? Yeah. Recession is happening. You in your mind, would you have done that?
No, I don't think so. Like, because we would have grew eventually.
Yeah.
But it forced our hand we have to go now.
Which tactically would be a really good decision, right? Because you're in the market.
It accelerated for sure.
That's pretty cool. Was that like one of your biggest challenges in the business time? Like in your journey through this whole thing, was this your biggest challenge or your biggest failure? You would say, what would you say were one of some of the biggest challenges about was it? That's awesome. Is that kind of, or were there other ones along the way?
Yeah, I think our biggest failure, which actually ended up being like maybe one of the best things that we did, was when we did get in the Portland market, we realized, at that time there was like 4 or 5 really good breweries, and the Costi was one of them. Like but they were really into music and sponsored music festivals, and they were really into like we'd walk into these beer bars and they'd be like, there's a ton of, we call them beer geeks, but the guys are really into beer, right? They're like, hey, come to use it. What kind of malts in here, and what's the ABV, and what's the IBUs, and Chris and I would sort of neckers, say that again, and we love craft beer. We didn't, really give a shit like how, what was in the actual beer, right? Did it taste better, right? It tastes good. And so we were faking it for like the first 2 months in Portland. And then we sort of come out packaged beer, and we do the same thing on the label, right? Like, hey, this label, we're this many IBUs, and we use these malts, and and our brewers really were into it, right? So they wanted us to really talk about the craft beer. But then we got into the market, and these beer geeks were talking to Chris and I, and we were like, I don't know, man. Like, I'm just crushing Coors Lights on the couch this week and watching football. That's what happened. Yeah. Study it up, figure it out, but like, it's not real. So then we were like, we're not really being true to ourselves with our marketing and branding side of the business. And so we instantly, at that point, we had hired a marketing director. She was really good. She was from Australia, and she was awesome. And she was like, hey, why don't you guys are beer geeks. Like, you guys, she wasn't a beer geek, and you guys just love having fun and crushing beers. Like, let's take that approach about branding and marketing. And that's when, now we had good beer, and then we had something that was really reflective of the team that we had hired. And so we started branding, like, who gives a shit how many IBUs are in this beer? It's really good. You should drink it, right? That was how we changed sort of our logo on our bottle and our labels on our bottle. The brand just instantly took off, right? It was like, and now we have, instead of like the 10% of beer geeks are drinking beer, now we have, whoever drinks craft beer, if they are into craft beer or not, they just want to drink a really good beer anyway. They don't really care on the IPA if it, what malt or hops are in the IPA. They just want an IPA that tastes really good. Yeah. So I think once we sort of got real with ourselves, then we saw a major trajectory, and that's when, we became one of the fastest growing breweries on the West Coast. We had really good beer, we had really cool branding. And then when we go, it was authentic. And when we go talk to people, beer bar, we go talk to a wholesaler about pairing our beer, and we'd be just authentic to ourselves. So, we tell them, hey, guys, and we're not really into the whole craft side of this thing, but dude, I'll tell you what, our beer sells, and it is really good. And this is why we're going to teach you guys out, and we're just having fun. Their motto was drink beer, brew beer, and have fun doing it. And we sort of lived that for the next like 6 or 7 years. That was the culture that we hired. That was sort of how we delivered in all of our goals, and it worked out well for our business.
Yeah, no, it sounds like it. So that was like the 6 or 7 year journey before you getting to your exit with Anheuser-Busch. And I want to talk, obviously, people want to know about that and like the dynamic of that. But I had kind of thinking a little bit advanced that you guys are working together all the time. You got different skills. If you had to say what his superpower was and what your superpower is, what would you say about your brother? Like, that's his superpower. And what would you say is his superpower?
Yeah, I mean, Chris is a really good operational guy. So, and I
He's got a comment. Yeah, you can't both do the same thing all the time. You guys are both good.
He's a really good sales guy. But I think, but yeah, I mean, he was better than I was. So just naturally, he moved over to like helping with the less fun part, which is sort of,
I think it'd be fun. This is really the offside.
Yeah, operational. So like, just managing schedules, raw materials, and a lot of the bullshit work. And Chris ran a spreadsheet for a while. Yeah, he was really good at it. But eventually we hired people that were a lot better at Chris doing it. But yeah, I mean, at the beginning we split it up, and Chris would do the operational side, and I would do a lot of the sales and marketing.
So you said his superpower.
Yeah, his superpower for sure is like idea creation, right? So
yeah,
super creative. Like it comes up, we could be in a room, and he always usually comes up with like the best idea of what we should do, an activation or something cool, or branding or marketing or sales incentive. And he always thinks outside the box. So then sometimes it's really annoying, right? Because it's a lot of work. His ideas are always a lot of work.
Yeah.
Right.
Like, well, why can't we just spend it to?
Yeah. Why can't we just do this? Like everyone else seems to be doing this, and it works. Like he's like, no, if I do that, we're gonna do this.
Yeah.
Which is great. And that's why we're successful, because we always shoot for the moon, right? And we always did stuff that other people weren't doing. But it takes a lot more work to do that. But yeah, it's a lot of his ideas, like a lot of the stuff at Timbrel or any of our businesses we've done overall, like a lot of the really cool ideas all came from my brother.
Yeah. Thanks, man. That's really cool. Yeah.
But you also have to hold his hand through a lot of shit.
Right. Yeah, don't give him a total. Yeah, that's a compliment there. Good idea, but you're like, check out the
really good idea of lighting up these tap handles. I'm like, why do we light these things up? Like, if you go to Star Bars, I mean, it should just look like light bulbs so we actually started putting batteries and lights in these little barrel handles that we had. But he doesn't want to like execute. He doesn't want to you got that.
What's the cost?
Lifespan of the battery is 2.5 weeks. So you have to go and replace these batteries. The wholesalers loved it. It was a cool idea, but
someone else figure that out. Well, I just think, having a brother that I would have loved to work with, and I'd be very complimentary, but that's never happened. I mean, it's very cool for your parents to see you guys not only work together and successful and enjoy working together. Yeah. It's hard enough to be an entrepreneur, but let alone do with a family member and have that sort of result as a family. So that's kind of why I was interested in that question. And that's, thanks for sharing that. And then, okay, so let's get to the end of this, because I do want to talk also about what you guys are doing now, because what you've done for the community and how you continue to invest in, after your awesome run with 10 Barrel, you get sort of to this place where, are you deciding to, at this point, sell the company, or is there just a lot going on and you think this is the time to sell?
The quick story is, and I had to go back into JC's days real quick, but the quick story is we peaked out JC's like in 2000, whatever, 7. We were going to sell it. Somebody wanted to buy JC's. They were going to give us 90% of the price in cash, and they want us to carry 10% of it. We had no idea what we were doing. They had really good financials too, so and assets, so we could have carried it, no problem. We just didn't understand it, so we said no. That's the recession kind of hits, right? We ended up selling JC's for 1/3 of the price 2 years later, and carried like 90%.
It's crazy,
right? And so we learned really quick.
It's good to know.
Yeah. On a smaller number, we realized really quickly that timing it matters. industry matters, like greed matters, like everything matters in that situation. We made a critical mistake at a younger age, right? So then we get to the point where 10 Barrel is absolutely smashing, right? We're all doing super well. We finally started making a nice income. All the employees are crushing. We have an amazing team. Like it's just running really, really good, right? And it's really fun to work there. And one of our partners, we had two partners, a son and a dad. One of the partners, the dad, was like, saw it, right? And he'd already been retired. He helped us out with the distributor side. And he's like, hey, you guys are smashing right now. I'm not doing anything. He'd come into work and buy guns and drop his trash off. And he was amazing, rah guy. But he's like, hey, you guys should get me out. Like, this is a good time to get me out because, like, you guys are grinding, you're growing the business. And I don't deserve to get any of this anymore. So, like, God, really nice of him, right? We obviously try to talk about it. Like, hey, we're in this together. Like, we're going together. He's like, I get it. Like, I appreciate everything, but, like, I can ride off in the sunset right now, and you guys are well on your way. We knew there was a couple big sales, like, 6 months prior. Contacted a broker, the best broker in the U.S. and said, hey, there's a chance we want to sell like 25% of our business. And at the time, it was big enough where we couldn't just go down the street bed and try to find someone to buy them out. And we knew at the time we needed, if we were going to get a new partner, we'd want like a strategic partner, like somebody that can help us grow, or somebody who's in the industry that is looking for a craft brewery. We don't need an individual because we have all the skill sets in the brewery. So, the guy called us back and said, yeah. I mean, Anheuser-Busch, you guys are already in line with Anheuser-Busch. They're looking to buy craft breweries. Like, you guys are a perfect opportunity for that. Anheuser-Busch. We're like, okay, well, let's just see if it might make sense. And called us back like an hour later. This is within like 2 days. Called us back within an hour later, and he's like, Anheuser-Busch wants to fly and see the brewery tomorrow. And we're like, what? Like, we were just talking about this like yesterday. So, yeah, they flew in their jet, fired up the lights in Bend Airport so they could land, cruised in, checked out the brewery, and within like 6 months, wow, right, with everything, but within 6 months, they provided an offer for us. And at that time, we met a lot of the executives at Anheuser-Busch, and they're like, we don't buy 25% of the brewery. We buy 100% of the brewery. We'd like to buy it. We will not buy it if you guys leave, right? You guys have to stay on. You have to run this thing. We don't know anything about craft beer. We love the management team. We love all of you guys. Like, you have to stay on. So we're like, oh, this might be a good deal for us, right? Take some chips off the table, right? We made a mistake at JC's. This number was like a multiple of like 18x. So, it's going to take us forever to kind of earn this money ourselves. Right. And the multiples were perfect. Right. So we're like, this is a perfect time to sell our brewery. We made the move. Right. We made the move, and under the impression they're going to keep us on, that everything's going to be good.
Didn't you have structurally some things that try to you did that a little bit though, like in not getting the mechanics of all aspects of the deal, but just kind of sharing some of my own episodes. I mean, there was always a earn-out component. I had to be out for 2 years or 3. But I negotiated that back after, the sale, that's a different story for us to talk about. I'm happy to share this about you guys. Mm-hmm. So did they want to tie? Because it sounds like they wanted to tie you down.
They wanted to tie us down, but at the time, they weren't doing earn-outs. So they bought 2 craft brewers before that, and they were paying everyone 100% up front, right? And so for us,
it's a dream deal.
It's a dream deal. Yeah.
And so on, that's the title. I mean, I don't know if they do that anymore.
Yeah, no. So we ended up
but you were in a hot market.
Yeah.
So that's
We didn't take the market. So they felt like they needed to make a move really quickly, and they offered what they offered, and it was a great deal for us. Probably not a great deal for them at the time. And so it made sense for us to do it. Since then, Jeremy and I joined the M&A team, and we acquired all the other breweries. We have to acquire all the other breweries. We were the last brewery. It was all cash offers. So everything else had 2 to 5 year earn-outs, and it ended up firing on all the other breweries.
They needed to get into the space, though, like wedge in there. Yeah, a few guys were one of the first, so maybe they were willing to concede that and then go into the structure where they have, the earn-outs and that kind of thing. But I just threw you out there. Sorry, you said it ended up backfiring for that later.
Well, yeah, because they didn't grow as fast as they were expected to grow, right? So, when all these large strategics acquired all these craft breweries, they felt like they could take the breweries and just spread them across the United States, right? Like, so 10 barrels in the Northwest or West Coast, we could just take this and just with our distribution power, and brewing power, just push it out and grow this thing. But what they didn't understand was that the farther you go from home, right, it's harder to sell your beer, and it's not very relevant because there's really good craft breweries in other parts of the U.S. as well. So yeah, and we were understanding that because we started to grow down into California and over to Idaho, realized that there's a lot of good breweries in California at the time. Our brewery rate of sale wasn't the same in Northern California as it was in Oregon, right? So we understood the farther we grew, like I see the same kind of velocity. So yeah, but it worked out for us at 10 barrel. And then we had amazing bosses at Anheuser-Busch. When we first joined up, we're like, we're going to be out here in like a year. Like we're going to hold on for a year. We're going to make sure our employees are set. All the employees got raises. All the employees got benefits. Like they all got contracts. Like 20. The cool thing about Anheuser-Busch, they gave us a couple extra million to give to our employees, our key employees, which was pretty awesome, man. So we got to spread out some money to the employees to kind of retain them through the transition, which was really rocky, right? With Anheuser-Busch buying a local craft brewery. So there's a lot of things to kind of bridge that. And then we got to thinking that we're going to just bounce out after a year and start another company. And we ended up having awesome bosses. They had this management program. They bring these young guys up from Brazil and they just smash. And so we're like, these guys were like guys that work at 10 barrel. Like it was awesome. So we had a really good run. So we stayed at 10 barrel for, 7 years, 8 years. You guys stayed that long. Yeah, you stayed that long. You're right, buddy.
We had some cool projects. So we, like Chris said, we jumped out there. Especially for entrepreneurs, it's kind of a hard thing to do because at some point it's easy to find something that's going to annoy you. When you have a parent, but for them, for the fun and leveraging you guys' creativity, and you got to get the one point got to do.
Yeah, so we so like 6 months into it, we're like, we told our boss like, this is great, but we're sort of growing really slowly, and you want us to grow a state per every 3 months, and so we're doing these rollout meetings, and it just wasn't too exciting, right? And there was just a lot of other challenges that we had with the AV integration, and there were some rules and having a boss, but the boss was cool, but there were some other bosses that weren't that cool, and so we're like, I don't know if this is gonna work, and so that hey, we'll give you as much time as you guys want, but I think we're going to probably transition out and do something else. He's like, what do you guys want to do? I'm like, what can we do? He's like, well, we got this M&A team that we're going around acquiring all these breweries. So we were number 4. We ended up acquiring together 12 other breweries, which is super fun. So Chris and I travel around with a really smart team, and we go meet all these brewery owners, and they gave us a seat at the table, which was pretty cool. They, like, hey, what you guys think of those guys? We go meet 2 or 3 breweries in the area, like in San Diego, and we'd talk to them at some meetings, and we'd figure out which ones we wanted to acquire, which was awesome. So we did that throughout the whole United States. And then we got into Florida, and we were looking at 2 different breweries. Chris and I were like, hey, I don't like either of these guys. Why don't you let us start a brewery down there? So we did that project as well. So we started this brewery called Basis Sir in Miami for them. So it took a year and a half. So then we did ran an innovation lab for them, which was based out of New York, where ABI is always chasing trends versus creating their own trends. So we did that for a couple of years. We did a lot of cool stuff for them, and it kept us engaged and excited. It was fun. But then at a certain point, we're like, hey, it's probably time.
Or move on their behalf to bring you into the M&A cycle, because now you build trust with the breweries that you guys are buying. And they're like seeing 2 guys that are on the other side of that equation and thinking, oh, okay, well, maybe I can have a similar experience. Whether they do or don't, time tells. And it was good for me because now you meet all these guys in the industry, right? And so networks just getting bigger. A lot of those transitions, I don't think companies really figure out what to do with the entrepreneurs, right? They try to get them in other processes or using a CRM system or some bullshit, or going to meet you don't need to go to. You're not used to that as an entrepreneur. You're used to be productive and not waste your time. So, kind of kudos for them to figure that out. I guess, last thing on this, and we're bumping up against your time, and I want to use it wisely here for both of you guys, obviously, today, because I want to hear about what you're doing now, what you think is next. And you've done so much since then, and it's so easy to grill into this story.
Yeah, I know this story.
I'm sure you guys told it times and care to, so I don't want to, beat on it more than necessary. But I just thought I was going to ask you one more thing about it. But was there any was there any controversy around you guys selling at that time? Did your employees on board? Was everybody on board with this scenario? Because in the end, it's local, right?
Yeah.
So did you guys? Because we sold we were funded by the Ben Venture Conference, right? So we had investors in Ben from the Ben Venture Conference fund, and then we were funded with outside investors. There's sort of like there shouldn't be a mystery that it's almost going to sell, right? And that's the journey of a tech company. I had the guy from Cairn on too, and he talked about that. But for you guys, a little different, man. You were local in culture. There was a little tension around that, wasn't there?
Massive. Yeah, I think in the industry, like in the craft brewing industry, we were like probably the biggest kickback that anyone ever got in our industry. We got when we sold, and we've we see them all right now. We know the analytics for everyone because they track it at Anheuser-Busch, so we can see the analytics of negative sentiment and positive sentiment for transactions. And 10 Barrel was by far like 10 times more negative sentiment than any other craft brewery that sold.
I don't understand why that's the case.
I don't get it. I think it never affected the employees. So the employees, we were always super tight and bonded. I think it was just the outside disturbance. We got a lot of kickbacks, so much that we had to shut socials, and we had PR companies coming in. We had, it was a lot to deal with, right?
Yeah.
And I think, and Jeremy and I get really emotional about it. Like, I'm really pissed off, when we were reading that.
Sorry about that. I don't want to fight. But
Some rags or some dipshit out of Seattle, right? I still remember it. Like, I can't remember his name, but some dipshit really took a disliking to the acquisition, and really got to us, right? And I think that for us, like, yeah, it was a tough thing for our wives to handle. Yeah, it was a tough thing for our families to handle. Like, we knew, and our employees. I think we felt worse for our employees to have to deal with negative sentiment because they had no choice in it, right? They didn't know what was happening. They did everything for us. Like, we made the decision, like, we could take it, right?
Yeah.
And so, but over the time that when people figured out that Anheuser-Busch was letting us run the brewery for the next 5 years, and we were ultimately responsible for it, people understood that nothing was changing, and it was the same people, no one's leaving, and it kind of faded out. But yeah, it was brutal when we first announced it. It just shows, I think it just shows true character of some folks, right? So I think there was a lot of negative sentiment from local competitors, right?
Yeah.
And we, know being on the M&A team, right? We see exactly who expressed interest in selling,
Yeah.
and so we know exactly who's talked to AEI, right, about selling their brewery. Then they come out a week later and say, I can't believe those guys would do that. We're craft only. We're independent. They're using that as an advantage, right? And so we know on the back of our head that, hey, they're doing this from PR standpoint to, try to hurt us in our sales. But I think, yeah, you sort of take offense to it. But I think there's a lot of folks out there too that, took the high road and, want to be Gary Fish, right? And some of the other folks in the industry, right, were like, hey, I'm proud of those guys. Like, I saw them when they started, selling beer out of the back of the trucks, and it's a pretty amazing story that they have. And those are the folks that, you can go play golf with now and say, hey, thanks for having our back, right? So I think, it gets through it, but you feel really bad for them, like Chris said. You feel bad for the employees, right? They didn't have a decision.
That's the toughest part, without a doubt, in any acquisition I've been part of, just because the things change, and sometimes they change for more opportunities and people that want to double down. And in your case, it sounds like those aspects are managed really well, like the transition line and all this kind of stuff. But other times, like, it's, they go through stuff like we had made change over systems that weren't really helping us, and it's just kind of wasted their day. And they weren't really doing some of these things before. But at that point, you can't really change it. You've got other obligations to, running the company. Like I said, one of the great things is trying to get the best deal as you can when you can, and so, you guys kind of handle that, took the high ground on that, it sounds like. And the other thing too, I think it's really that where the story sort of, the fact that it continued and how much you invest in the community and stuff like that only sort of cements, I think, the legacy that all this was a positive because you kind of kept giving back. I mean, not that you had any obligation to do so, guys. Like, frankly, it's, your life, go do something else if you want. That's really what you want to do. But you're doing these things on the podcast for entrepreneurs. And let's do that, man. Let's rock with, like, I know it's, again, I'm bumping up the time that we said, so I want to be honest with that. But you leave and you start doing a bunch of other stuff in the community. And a lot of it's, I think, restaurant, retail. You tell me, like, what was the sequence of things? And I know we had a comment for something like, I wish we hadn't. You come with some cash and you're like, oh, okay, now let's do this. Maybe those opportunities as much before. And I mean, I certainly admit to that, and it's a good problem to have, but it's also like, hey, maybe I should. How's that? I feel like I'm a better entrepreneur, even though even there, like I'm like 500, thinking that the team's pretty good. Yeah, we'll take my worst angel. I feel like I'm getting to be a better angel investor, but so you guys, you eventually transition. Now you start doing some stuff. Tell me what you're up to now, and maybe kind of try to break down your last, 2 to 5 years, whatever the business you invest in. I'm guilty of telling like 3 questions. So sorry about that.
I think all entrepreneurs do this, but people warned us of this when we were not big readers. I'm sure it's written in 1,000 books, but like when entrepreneurs sell and they move on, they miss the juice, right? They miss that big deal. They miss like being in the action, right? And I think that when we sold our brewery, we were still working there. We weren't getting like, you get a massive Costco deal. You're ringing the bell, right? You're like, you don't care. It's not like, it's not as big a deal anymore. So you don't get that big rush of like, hey, we just closed a massive deal for a company. Let's go. So you're looking for that. Like, where can you find that at? So I think we just started getting back, even though people warned us of that and said, what do you do? Just take time off. Don't jump back at anything. We're like, yeah, for sure. We're going to do that. Like, pretty young guys. Yeah, that's hard to do. Totally get it. And we're like, someone's like, hey, what do you think of this idea? Like, oh, that sounds perfect. Yeah, like we could crush it at that. Yes. Yeah. So yes.
Yeah, I'm still hopeful on that one. Reynolds, if you listen to this. No, I'm not saying that's not going.
Yeah. So we had some swinging messes for sure.
Our business advisor said, hey, take a year off. Don't dive into anything. And then we took like 2 months and then we just started diving into stuff. So yeah, we definitely got into some stuff over our head. You almost feel a little bit, I would say that you have the confidence, right, to jump into something that maybe you don't have the knowledge or experience with, which is a massive mistake, without bringing people around you that know what they're doing. And so we did that a couple times and we lost money doing that. And then at that point, now we've sort of dropped back and said, hey, what are our core skills? What are we good at? What do we like to do? And we've tried to sort of focus, our time into that space.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, give back. I mean, we've done a lot for the community, but the community's done a lot for us. So they supported us a little bit through our business. I mean, it's and that's the great thing about Bend, Oregon, is if you're an honest business person in town, it's a small town, right? If you do something wrong or do something unethical, it gets out really, really quick. And the community will always support businesses that always make the right decision. And I think it's been amazing doing business in Bend, Oregon. And that's why we love it.
That's awesome. You guys kind of slipped something in there. You're like, we got back to our core and what we liked, and I mean, it's so weird because like you have these various parallels. I remember when I first started sold, I mean, I leased a space in Sun Valley for 6 months. I prepaid it condo. I was in C&B bomb and I loved that for 2 months. I was young, I just couldn't. It was that I wanted to do the next thing that actually failed. That was the one that I had that failed, but it wasn't my biggest investment, but it was big enough. And I had investors involved, and I didn't like that feeling, to the extent you can avoid that. But it's interesting. You kind of need to almost weird way you do that, because I felt the same way. I felt like, hey, well, I've done this before now. Like, I feel like when no commodity, it's not that. You got to go out and work hard. It's got to be the right idea. It's got to be positioned. It actually took me 10 years then before I had the nerve to kind of go out and again. But I did anyway, long story. But so what are you guys doing? Yeah, I don't want to sure thing. You guys doing now? Where'd that core discipline take you? Like you found your way back into what are the projects that you're excited about now? Let's go ahead.
Yeah, we have obviously we have a restaurant group in town. They had 4 restaurants. We just shut one of the restaurants down. It was kind of a dog for us. And we got some kickback on shutting that down, which was kind of interesting because we haven't seen kickback in the news since Timberall, which was the same kind of, you have flashbacks, this news writing some stuff. The TSDs, taxes are horrible owners. Whatever, Cops Bros can't run a business. I'm like, come on. But yeah, no, the restaurant group's going amazing, right? And we started that because we had a couple of restaurant guys within Timberall that didn't get a big paycheck when we sold, right? And so we're like, hey, we'll start a restaurant group, bring you guys in as equal partners. And then in case anything hits the fan anymore, you guys can just chip over the restaurant group. And so it's been amazing. They've grown it up and they're running the restaurant group, they're doing an amazing job. And so they're great partners of ours. And so yeah, we got that going. We have Syntopia, which is a really big brand for us right now. It started out as a CBD brand. We do have a D9 THC piece of that brand, right? Not in Oregon, but that is on the East Coast. It's going really well for us. It's awesome. Obviously, we've done a lot of investments in assisted living, some hotel business. We're starting an RV park down in Medford, which we're excited about. So, never done it, but hospitality, and it's pretty standard, kind of what we're used to. Just software's a little bit different, some other stuff, but that's been an interesting business.
Is that by an existing one, or you just
No, we started it. We're starting it from scratch.
but there's and putting it in?
Yeah, and we have partners in that business. Like all the rest, we want partners really experience it. A couple of the partners are just really good at what they do, and so that's been a fun project for us. I think for us right now, we're at a point in our life where it's more about the partnerships for us. Like it's finding guys we've always wanted to do business with. Like the Zetopia was co-founded with the Hot Valley guys. There's guys that have been good friends with us for 20 years that we've always competed against and or been really close with. They were like, hey, let's do something together, and we trust them, and they're amazing people. So that's been kind of our life right now, is just finding partnerships that make sense for us, that have really good business ideas that we have experience in or feel like we have a pretty good grip on, and it's going a lot better.
That's awesome. So, yep. All right. Well, gentlemen, there it is. Not too painful. It's time through. Really, man. Thanks again for spending the time. Yeah, I do have like 4 or 5 other questions I'm not going to ask you. It's not cool to pin you down here. Yeah, that was a really great sort of outline of how you became an entrepreneur and what you've done with it, and what you learned, and the failures. And thanks for sharing some of those things. They're like a little bit tougher in the journey, because again, like I go back to when I was a young guy. This is what's going to help, right? Know other entrepreneurs down and be able to hear from that. And the fact that we can get content like that out there is awesome, man. So I appreciate you guys, man. Have nothing else?
Yeah, I appreciate you having us. So yeah, it's nice to meet you. We've heard a lot about you over the years, right? We had some coffee a couple weeks ago or a month ago.
Yeah.
And you've done some amazing things right in town. And it's really inspiring for us to hang out with you and get to pick your brain on some stuff. And appreciate it.
Yeah. Great time with you guys, man. Appreciate it. All right. Onward. Thanks, buddy. Cheers. Let's put Kim and go.